Your identity is being stolen right now, and your privacy is being violated. And that's why we have an expert, Jonathan Steele, who is going to tell us all about how your business can be protected from AI cybersecurity risks. And Jonathan Steele is a family law attorney specializing in high stakes divorces. He's the founder of Steele Fortress, a cybersecurity and privacy business. So, Jonathan, please tell us, how can entrepreneurs protect their business from AI cybersecurity risks?
AI Superwoman podcast with Lily Patrascu shares the world's most innovative AI tools and processes to go from technophobe to AI pro, attract leads, close sales, automate your business, enhance productivity, and deploy AI agents to do your work.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on your show. It's a pleasure. There's a lot of different risks that come along with AI. It has obviously good qualities as well, but some of the risks that people are facing is inadvertent leaking of private information. They assume that sort of chat bots, whether it's ChatGPT, Claude, you name it, that there's some privacy that's being preserved when you send information to these chatbots, and there just isn't. And that's going to be across businesses as well as personal usage of it.
Thank you. So the first thing is that people don't know that when you put the information in ChatGPT, it's basically like a free-for-all, isn't it?
Well, you're giving your data to OpenAI, who's training their models on your data. So anytime you're telling it personal information, that's getting absorbed into, call it, the brains of the model.
Okay, so what should entrepreneurs do to protect themselves and still be able to leverage the immense power of AI to automate and save their business millions of dollars?
There's a few things I think that come to mind. One of them is, making your employees aware of that your data is not private when you give it to these models. You can try to leverage local AI as opposed to cloud-based AI, in which case your data is not being sent anywhere outside of your machine or your network. And I think that helps a lot. And then you can use AI proactively as certain kind of firewalls that protect your networks are using AI and machine learning to analyze sort of traffic patterns and vulnerabilities, and they act on them much faster than a human could do.
Thank you. Tell us more about local AI. What do you mean exactly?
So, there's one application of it that comes to mind. It's called LLaMA. LLaMA allows you to download a lot of different open source models. One of them being LLaMA 3.2, LLaMA 3.1. Those are developed by Meta, the company that owns, Facebook, Instagram. And they invested millions and millions of dollars into developing these models, and they're open source. And so you can download versions of them that run locally on your computer, and they work completely offline. So you could have your Wi-Fi off on your laptop and be engaging with a chat bot. It may not be as polished and as advanced as some of the ChatGPT models, but it's private.
Thank you. Imagine you wanted to write a contract for family law using AI. What would you do to keep it safe from being out in the open?
I would try to keep it local. As we mentioned, it helps to keep your data secure. And then, where you're storing the output is also equally important. So, you're going to be wanting to store it on something that's encrypted at rest in the event somehow your network is hacked or your hard drives are accessed somehow. Having it encrypted is going to add an extra layer of protection for your data.
Thank you. What's the best way to protect your phone, for example, from AI cybersecurity risks?
I don't know that the phones have been a sort of a recognized attack surface just yet. I'm sure that's on the horizon. I think there's some AI that's being used to scrape websites and to scrape sort of intellectual property that's published on websites, and some of that's being accessed on phones like anything else. And so there's things you can do as someone that owns a website to try to protect against that. And it's sort of unrelated to your question about a phone, but I don't know that phones are being attacked as often yet.
Thank you. What are the types of things that entrepreneurs should put in place to protect their business from AI cybersecurity risks?
One of them is, if you go to it, most businesses are going to have a website, and you're going to put out whether you have a blog page or you have support articles or you have employees that are investing time and money into your website. If you don't want that website being crawled and assimilated into these models, there are things you can do with your web registrar that try to block these AI bots from having the ability to scrape content from your website.
Thank you. Tell us why that would be important to prevent these crawlers from accessing your website.
You invest time and money into your content that you're putting out, and whether you're a YouTube sensation that has hundreds of thousands of followers and what you're putting your life's work into is just being absorbed and your content is being basically stolen. That's your content. That's worth something. And so if you're a business that's putting out articles that you paid employees to invest time into writing, that intellectual property is just being stolen from you.
Thank you. Tell us about other things to put in place to protect your business from AI cybersecurity risks.
I think what's going to be important is employee training. That at the end of the day, that's your weakest link always with cybersecurity, whether it's phishing or business compromise email, things like that. Education is your friend. You're going to want to teach your employees about AI, about responsible use of AI, about what you can and can't use it for in your work capacity. And I think that's going to reap the most dividends.
Thank you. Regarding voice cloning, I think one big danger is someone impersonating you and asking for funds, or even impersonating your likeness in a video and then pretending to be you in a Zoom. And I think I saw that there was a lady who was thinking that she was in a relationship with Brad Pitt. And of course she wasn't. And I think she paid like $70,000 or something to the likeness of Brad Pitt because she thought she was having a relationship with him. So what would you say entrepreneurs should put in place to protect themselves from being deceived by voice cloning?
A system where you are having safe words that are exchanged for certain kinds of exchanges, transactions. So if you have a regular payment that you have to authorize via phone, maybe you tell your employee, you'll know it's me because I'll use the following word. And families do that same sort of thing. And somebody calls and says, "Hey, I have your child with me, send me money, or I'm never going to bring them back." You would want your child to know strawberry is the word that lets me know it's really you, or something, some sort of code word that you've exchanged in advance to verify that the person you're talking to is the right person. And then, with in the specific business capacity, you can always verify with a second form of communication. So if you get a call from your boss telling you do something out of the ordinary, maybe you email them to confirm it before you do it.
Thank you. Around, let's say, bank transactions, what are the kind of AI cybersecurity risks that could occur, and how could a business protect themselves from any of that happening?
I think that's mostly on the bank's responsibility to secure their own software and their own hardware from attacks, both AI and non-AI.
I'm thinking more in the case of like someone persuading you perhaps by email to send them money, or that kind of thing.
You would want, maybe to the extent you can have sort of two signers on maybe transactions above a certain amount, to sort of have a safety check or a sanity check put in place. And then again, just trying to verify, you're receiving a legitimate invoice from a vendor and you are verifying it with that vendor before you're just making payments on them.
Thank you. I'm thinking also now with, let's say if you want to make like a payment to your, let's say to buy a property, I wonder what changes need to be made to make sure that the money actually goes to the right account and the verifications that are made are actually the right ones.
That seems like it's been a concern for a long time in terms of, making sure you are validating the recipient information, the wiring information, all of that is legitimate. And certainly if you are buying real estate, that's a large enough transaction where it's worth triple checking that you're sending it to the right place.
Thank you. Is there any other risk that businesses tend to need protecting from in terms of AI?
I don't know that it's a different one, but it's maybe a more high stakes one. If depending on what kind of business this is, if you're a doctor's office, if you're a law firm, if you're an accounting firm, and you have sensitive data for clients or you have personally identifiable information, the stakes are just much higher. So if you aren't training, your paralegals in a law firm to not use ChatGPT for client information, even if it's easier, even if it's faster, the stakes are too high in professions like that to let it go uneducated.
Thank you. Tell us about some case studies of things you have seen happen either for your clients or for someone that you've heard online where they've had an AI cybersecurity risk, and how did they deal with it?
I don't think that the inadvertent sharing of private data to these large language models has come to fruition yet. I think that, even if you inadvertently gave data to ChatGPT 3.5, and now we're on 4.5. I don't know that what you've shared inadvertently is making its way into the output from 4.5. It might take a little bit longer to see the effects of that, but I'm expecting that's on the near horizon.
Thank you. Tell us what else you would like entrepreneurs to know about protecting their business from AI cybersecurity risks.
Just generally speaking, it's a valuable tool. It streamlines a lot of things. It does things that humans can do, but much faster and much more thorough. But like most tools, there's a good use and there's a bad use. And, it's no different than, a hammer in the hands of a violent person can make a good tool a bad tool. And so it's about, implementing it in a way that's responsible, in a way that is not jeopardizing, client information. And you can't just, out of fear of doing those things, not try it. It is the future. It's not going anywhere. And either you're adopting it and you're doing it safely, or you're going to get left behind.
Thank you. Tell us about some case studies that you've heard of that have been really serious, where clients have been adversely impacted by AI cybersecurity threats. And what would you have done differently in that particular case?
I don't know that it falls under cybersecurity, but what I'm reading a lot about now is lawyers that are using large language models to try to do their research for them, to try to do their drafting for them. And without fail, they are regularly hallucinating. They are making up precedent. They are making up case law that does not exist. And lawyers aren't double checking. So they're filing these things with the court and getting sanctioned for large amounts of money because they're citing cases that don't exist. Wow,
that is actually a little bit funny. And of course, very sad as well at the same time. What would you say, what industries are most vulnerable to cyber attacks? Are there particular industries that are more vulnerable, or would you say all?
I think most are going to be vulnerable. It's a question of stakes. So, your local coffee shop might be as vulnerable as a Fortune 500 company, but a breach is going to have much different effects on a small business versus a large one.
Tell us how AI can be used to bypass cybersecurity measures already put in place by businesses.
Yeah, so I mentioned using it defensively as to protecting your network, your computers, your internet traffic, all of that. And it does do a good job of that, but it's a cat and mouse game because, like the bad hammer example, there's an offensive use of it. There's asking AI to assist you in building malware, in writing phishing emails, and things like that. And some of the models, or most of the models, they try to put safety checks in place, and most of them will stop you if you just say, hey, build me malware. But if you're saying to it, build me malware for a testing environment to try to educate students or something, you might trick some of these older models into inadvertently helping you do something nefarious. So I think that would be an example.
Thank you. How does AI impact traditional cybersecurity threats like phishing, malware, and ransomware?
Yeah, so you're probably familiar with these phishing emails where it's your Nigerian prince cousin asking you to wire $500,000, and that would raise an eyebrow for most people now because they've heard of that, and it's probably broken English with terrible grammar. Um, AI doesn't suffer from those same problems. AI is going to write you a beautifully written email. It's going to have perfect grammar, perfect spelling, and it's going to be a little bit more creative than the just boilerplate, send me money kind of thing. So it's making phishing emails just much more believable.
Thank you. What is an AI-powered cyber attack and how does it work?
I think that would be an example of one is AI written phishing emails. And then I think, I haven't heard of this happening yet, but I imagine it's possible. And if it hasn't happened, it's coming, where you're using artificial intelligence to assist in sort of what's called a DDoS attack, a distributed denial of service. And you can just make that kind of attack more effective, more evasive, and harder to stop with the use of artificial intelligence.
Thank you. How can AI be used to attack your website and what can be done to prevent it?
So I don't know if attack is the word I would use, although I'm sure that's also possible. But I think scraping of the content is what your website is going to be most vulnerable to. And in most web registrars settings, it's a new setting. So if you haven't gone into your page settings in a while, it's worth looking and seeing if there is it's usually as simple as a checkbox where you say block AI scraping. And I think that maybe it works a little bit, but it's worth doing.
Thank you. What role does AI play in automating large-scale hacking operations?
That would be, that's the distributed denial of service is a large scale where you have a botnet of sort of slave computers that you've hacked into over time, and just making that process smarter would be a use of AI in that kind of attack.
Thank you. What other things did you put in place in your own business to prevent AI cybersecurity threats?
Yeah, I have AI that helps to analyze logs and traffic on a network, because you may have hundreds of thousands of lines of logs that nobody has the time or ability to sift through looking for sort of unusual traffic or something that shouldn't be there. And even if you know what to look for, it's just a laborious process, and AI can do it in seconds. And so having a sort of an automated artificial intelligence powered Python script or an application that you built that reads your log files and gives you sort of like a high level summary is something that I've used in my own projects.
Thank you. What can possibly go wrong if someone was to regularly use ChatGPT for everything they do in their business, including creating standard operating procedures and the admin that they normally do with ChatGPT?
Yeah, so what comes to mind is everything. Everything could go wrong. If you're using ChatGPT to write a contract for you or terms of service for your website or a privacy policy, it might sound good and it might have been really easy. It might have spit that out in seconds, but it might not be compliant with laws and regulations. And in the example of a privacy policy, for instance, I think it makes sense to use AI, but it does not, in my view, make sense to have AI take the first bite of that apple. I would go to a lawyer. I would ask someone that knows how to write a privacy policy to assist you in coming up with the first draft. And then maybe you feed your privacy policy to AI and say, point out holes, give me improvements, suggestions, refinements, and then you take those suggestions to your lawyer and bounce them off them. So I think that there's a process by which it can be helpful, but just blindly adopting policies that have been written by AI is a crapshoot.
Thank you. Is that mainly because there's a lot of potential hallucinations and errors that ChatGPT and other AIs could spit out that are actually non-existent?
Hallucination is definitely the most concerning issue, but some of it's also just jurisdictional. So if you're having contracts written in a specific state, for instance, and the model is spitting out information from a different state, your contract may not be enforceable because it wasn't written with your specific state in mind.
Thank you. How can someone protect their content that they have, let's say, that they put out online? Let's say, I don't know, podcasts or video courses or other content that is freely available online for people to see.
Until I heard the word freely, I had a good answer for you. You can paywall your content. You can put a login page before your content, and that's going to stop AI. But if you want it to be freely accessible and easily accessible, you're rolling the dice as far as whether or not AI is going to have the ability to scrape your content and then absorb it.
Thank you. How can a business protect themselves against defamation that could be created with AI? I'm talking about, for example, let's say if a competitor wanted to like completely, put you in a hole, they would perhaps create, hundreds of fake news or, put them on so many different websites and have like a custom agent create so many fake news about you and spread it like viral.
That's a scary thought. And without you mentioning it, that had not occurred to me. So I do think what you're articulating is in fact a legitimate threat. As we've seen with elections, and I'm not going to get too political on you, but there are bots that have the ability to convey disinformation, and you're able to, create fake Facebook profiles and have automated content being pushed. So if you were to build one of these bots with the intention of tanking a business or their reputation or their community involvement, that does seem to be a legitimate threat.
Thank you. Tell us about your business and how it can help entrepreneurs to protect it against AI cybersecurity threats.
So we take a holistic view, and AI threats are just part of the picture, but we sort of help people to be security, privacy, things like that. That it's not a light switch; it's a journey, and it's a constantly evolving thing. Because the threat landscape is constantly evolving. And so we sort of help people to navigate that process, that constantly evolving threat pattern, because if that's not your business, that's not what you should be doing. If you're a dentist, you're not operating on yourself. And so if you're not familiar with security risks and how to stay ahead of them, you're better off hiring a company like ours, and we can assist with that.
Tell us about how did you become aware of cybersecurity risks and AI cybersecurity risks in your work in family law?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a pretty common overlap in divorce cases with whether it's stalking, tracking, inadvertent privilege access, data access sharing. So that piqued my interest, and then COVID hit and I just had more time to get formal education in cybersecurity, and it snowballed.
Thank you. Tell us how entrepreneurs, how their privacy is being violated with AI and what they can do to protect it.
I think that would be employees sharing information about the company because they're looking for a shortcut. And so, it might be easier to dump your financial statements into ChatGPT and say, summarize this, put it into a fancy looking balance sheet, things like that. And then you didn't even know what all of your company's personal information and maybe client information and vendor information has now been absorbed into these large language models.
Thank you. Tell us about what could possibly go wrong when someone does that.
Everything can go wrong. If you are a law firm and you are doing that and you are sharing client information and you want to upload bank statements and say, spot irregularities and give me information and summaries about somebody's spending patterns, and then that comes out that you did that. If you're a lawyer, your law license is on the line. If you are an accountant, you probably are in jeopardy of not being able to practice as an accountant. As doctors, any sort of profession where you have a licensing requirement, if you are being irresponsible with any tool, AI included, you're jeopardizing that license.
Thank you. Tell us what else should entrepreneur consider when it comes to AI cybersecurity risks?
That they're constantly evolving. It's not stagnant. So if you think you can just, I'm secure today, I followed a checklist, I talked to an expert, I did what they told me to do, I paid some money, I'm good to go. You might be until tomorrow. And now there's a new landscape for threats. Now there's a new model of AI. Now the AI is smarter. And so it is that cat and mouse game or a game of whack-a-mole where you need to constantly stay vigilant or you're going to be a victim of it.
Thank you. Have you ever had an AI cybersecurity risk yourself? And if yes, how did you overcome it?
I haven't. I'm fortunate to say that I know about anyway. I like to think that I keep a pretty good posture as far as like my digital presence goes. I don't have a whole lot of personally identifiable information that's out there, and I do some operational security on my own to keep it that way. And so maybe I'd like to think it's a result of that I haven't been the victim of an attack, and hopefully that does not happen.
Thank you. When it comes to passwords, is there anything entrepreneurs can do to protect themselves from AI cybersecurity risks?
Yeah. AI is going to help evildoers to crack easy passwords. So if your password's password123, if your password is your dog's name or the month that you were born and 3 random numbers, AI is going to guess that in seconds. And that can't be your password if you want whatever you're securing to be secure. So what you're needing to do is use a password manager to generate random passwords, unique passwords for each service, or passphrases. Those are easier to remember. And so you're going to want long, random. It could be up to 128 letters. That's a lot to type, but your password manager does it without breaking a sweat.
Thank you. Are you talking about LastPass?
LastPass is one. There's 1Password, there's LastPass, there's KeePass. There's a lot of different password managers. There are some that are proprietary. Apple has Apple's Keychain. Google has a version of that. Browsers have a version of it. There's no shortage of password managers. There just seems to be a shortage of people that are using them.
Thank you. I've received a few threats, like in the email, saying like, "Oh, we have a video of you doing this and that." And of course, I don't have any of that. But let's say if someone like me that was threatened by someone by email, what would you have them do to protect themselves from cybersecurity, from AI cybersecurity risks?
If it were me, I would probably delete it. I probably wouldn't do a whole lot beyond that. The last thing you want to do is respond. The last thing you want to do is click an unsubscribe link because who knows where that's going. Deleting it is usually going to be your best option there. That would be what I would do.
Thank you. Tell us where entrepreneurs can find you.
I'm accessible by phone. I'm accessible by email. My website has all my contact information, so you can find me at steelefortress.com.
Thank you.
Follow me for more AI productivity tools.